you?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Well, we've tried to record this multiple times and I just ripped my shirt in one of them. So
So
great.
not great. Compare it to how you were doing 5 minutes ago.
Okay, great. Yeah. I said this is a tricky subject for me because this is something I have struggled with for most of my life.
Mm.
Um, and I understand. So the number one question somebody said is, well, how do I make it stop?
That people love that question in
Yes.
every single thing that we do.
There
Make
is
it
some version
stop.
of that.
I don't want it to happen.
Yeah.
And our favorite answer, which it just annoys everyone, is it's going to happen.
Yep.
It's going to happen. It's just a matter of what you do with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about it, right? So
Yeah.
comparing ourselves to other people, to their relationships, to their job, to their body, any of those millions and millions of things we did. And I know we just had an episode about
We don't remember about external validation.
external validation. And I think that we wanted to do these episodes together because I think that external validation and comparison, they like to hang out together.
They do. They're friends. They're
They're
buddies.
friends. Yeah, they're buddies.
They
Yes.
like to chill.
Uh-huh.
You know?
Okay. So why is it so hard to stop doing? Because one, we've been doing it for forever. You've probably been doing it forever. If you struggle so much with it. And it's how we try to place ourselves within the world, right?
Yeah.
We have no way of tracking, right? So like in school, from a really young age, you track in some way of like, oh, my grades or teachers or compared to my siblings. And then you sort of just keep that going for forever because we're trying to figure out how we fit into this world. And so we compare ourselves to others to figure out, well, what box am I in and how do I do this? And this is when it can sort of become risky, that word again.
Yes. And the thing that keeps coming up when we talk about everything is like how it relates back to safety and how important it is for us to feel safe in this world. And I think when we compare ourselves to others, it gives us almost a false sense of safety of if this person's doing okay and I'm not doing what this person is doing, then maybe I'm not safe.
Yeah.
Right. And then our anxiety ramps up of, oh, I have to do it in this way because this person seems like they're doing well. And the tough thing is about that is that you are no one else but yourself. It's the toughest part about all of this is that you are no one but you. And comparing yourself to someone else is doing yourself a complete injustice.
Yeah.
It is not fair for you to look at someone else's circumstances, personality, whatever they're doing, and say, I need to be doing what they're doing because you're in different positions, no matter what.
I'm thinking about, the idea of the term jealousy. And I guess the emotion I keep thinking, oh, I should pull up my feelings wheel.
Feelings wheel.
You know that my feelings wheel is on the back of my computer. Hold
you
on.
can't pull it up. You have to look behind.
But I have to move everything. I want to know where it's at actually in the feelings wheel, simply because, Nikki, make sure you put a picture of the feelings wheel with this as well on Instagram when we upload this. But I am just interested because I think about it with a ton of grief. And I'm wondering where it actually lies within, which I don't know. There's so many things on here. Will I find it?
Can we do a little song?
Like can you do that really fast?
Like Jeopardy?
Yeah. You're doing really good so far. It's funny, I don't see it on here, which actually is really surprising. Wow. But I think that based on like the other words that I would see, it would fit somewhere under sad. And I think, and I've been thinking about this, right? Like I feel like jealousy actually it's a really great way to avoid grief.
Yeah. Wow.
To be jealous and to compare myself to others is a great way for me to avoid my own sadness and grief. And the reason I started thinking about that is because somebody asked this really wonderful question of jealousy when comparing where others are in life, like being pregnant with where I want to be. And I think about that is the surface level emotion is jealousy. The primary emotion is grief and sadness.
Yeah.
I am very sad. That is not where I'm at. I would like to be there. That's what I'd like. And I feel like I'm waiting and it's very hard to wait. And that is grief, to have unmet expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so I love what you're saying. And I think that I think is so important to acknowledge, is that we're comparing ourselves, but there's something underneath it. And so for you to recognize, because sometimes it's happening so naturally, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's happening so quickly, so automatic, that we're not taking the time to even recognize when we're doing that. And so for you to be really aware of, when am I comparing myself to other people? And to take a beat to be able to say, well, what's going on for me that this is happening so much
Mm-hmm.
in this area, right? Like, what am I
Yeah.
feeling? What's underneath this?
Yeah.
And the more you can slow yourself down and say, what's going on that I'm feeling this need to compare myself to this other person, or what this other person is doing, and what else can I do with that, right? Because the
Mm-hmm.
comparison in and of itself is not helping.
It's not. Shocking. Shocking.
And that is the episode. Just kidding. That is it.
End it right there.
Right.
Okay, yeah, right. So comparing to other couples. Why do I do this? Well, what isn't working about your relationship? What are you comparing? Is there a part of you that wishes I'm trying to think of what you would compare to, right? Like, is there someone that you see in a relationship where they travel a lot and you think, well, my partner never takes me anywhere, my partner never goes anywhere? Okay, well, wait a second, what's your part in this? And what are you sad about?
Yeah.
Oh, I said I'm missing out on stuff. Great, that is legit. How do you make that happen?
If I have another example, if you are out, you see that someone is giving more affection to their partner than you get from your partner,
Mm,
what do you feel like you're missing in your relationship? Do
mm-hmm.
you need more affection? Do you need more connection? And if the natural comparison is coming up, and it's making you realize what you're missing in your relationship, that is a signal to move towards your relationship and say, hey, I'm looking for this. This is something I feel like I'm missing. Can we have a conversation about
Mm-hmm.
this?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it feels easier to compare than turn towards your partner in a really vulnerable way
Yeah.
and say, hey, this is something I'm really looking for in our relationship that I'm not receiving.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it just feels safer to compare, but in the end, that comparison is just going to eat away at you, because you're not actually being able to move anything in your relationship without that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, best tips for body comparison. What people don't talk about enough is body grief. And if you are on Instagram, you can follow Body Image by Bree. I think it's just at Body Image by Bree. Nikki, maybe you can find them and tag them. And they do a really wonderful job of talking about body grief, right? Which is like, I find myself jealous, but what is it? Oh, she can fit into different size clothes than I am. The world is made for her in a different way. Um, he is able to get a different types of relationships than I am because of my body, right? So like, what are the things that I'm truly comparing myself? And then what's the grief I need to feel within myself to understand that comparison is actually, it doesn't do anything for me. Right. So what it is I feel like, okay, I'm in a larger body and I sit in a chair in a doctor's waiting room, or I experience medical bias from a doctor. It's really fucking sad. And you're right. Like, if you were in a smaller body, that would be much fucking better.
Mm-hmm.
It's better to live within the world. This world is not made for some of us in our certain bodies and how we look. And it's a really difficult thing. And that's the deep grief work that we have to do. Right. She has, I'm trying to think, do you remember who was that Instagram influencer that had the insane butt? And she just did
Oh,
like a million squats and just squatted all over New York City.
yes, I
What
know
was her name?
exactly who you're
You
talking
know
about.
who I'm talking about,
I
right?
don't know her name, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
And like, and so everyone for like a while, she was like this huge thing, and everyone's like, that's what I have to do is 1,000 squats a day. You probably have to do more than that. I don't even know.
I don't know.
And right, but what was it? It was that she was getting a massive amount of tension. She was getting branding deals, right? Like, it was like, "Oh, well, if I looked like that, life would be easier for me."
Right. That magical thinking comes in.
That magical thinking, and some parts is magical, but the other part is, like, sometimes, like, it's not true. Like, you see, like, certain people online, and you're like, "What do they have about them? Oh, they're really hot, and they talk into a microphone." And, like, so then we have other people that are, like, the coolest fucking people in the whole goddamn world, and, like, in a lot of ways, our society has really shitty values. We don't have the greatest priorities as a value,
Right,
like, as
right,
as
right.
a society, would
Right,
you
right.
say, right? Like,
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that. We're
we're
constantly
in
fighting up against them.
right, and so that this is the difficult thing, and that is the grief work.
I also, I think a lot of the time when we talk about comparison, we talk about like the only person you can compare yourself to is yourself, who you were yesterday is like, but I think in terms of your body, that's also something to talk about because
Mhm.
for you to compare yourself, your body to who you were when you were 18 years old, your body changes.
A lot.
And so
Yeah.
for that is another part, and I think that that's a big thing, right? To be able to say, this is an area of your life where comparing yourself to your younger self is not going to be helpful for you.
No, probably not. Especially if you weren't feeding that body properly and, like, nourishing it,
Yes,
and, like, you probably, you know what I mean? Like, you probably weren't, like, really taking care of that body, because, like, you're
right,
18, you don't have to. That shit's,
right.
like,
Exactly. Your
reusable, it feels like.
metabolism fast as shit.
All the stuff, right? I
Yeah,
mean, also, like, you could, like, I could not work out and, like, go out and run, and it would do nothing, right?
right.
Like, and so everything is just different, and so, and then there's grief with that. Oh, there's grief with aging,
Yes.
right? Is that, like, just sometimes it doesn't matter, but, like, your body's just gonna get older. And I feel like, we live in a society that's, like, so obsessed with looking younger. The fact is, like, even if you look younger and you get the Botox and you do the fillers and, like, whatever that feels important to you, you're not getting younger.
Yeah.
You may look it,
But you're
right?
not getting younger.
But you're not getting younger. And so then there's this, like this challenging thing of, like, oh, I look young, but there is a huge grief of getting older,
Yeah.
especially in a society that doesn't value age, especially for women.
Yeah. This brought up a feeling for me yesterday. I played tennis. I play tennis these days. And
Yeah, you do.
halfway through, my knee started to hurt, my thumb started to hurt, like my whole body started to hurt. And I had this feeling of, I wish that I did more when I was younger, when I didn't have these like immediate aches and pains
Yeah.
from doing these things. And I think that that is it. I think grief is a perfect, feeling that comes up of that, that time has passed
Yeah.
and that is no longer here. I think that's why we, hold on to stuff too. We were just talking about this the other day, like how we would love so much to be minimalists and like not hold on to shit.
It's like my dream.
It is my
I'm a
dream,
minimalist. I'm
minimalist,
kidding.
but I go through my shit and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll wear that or like maybe I'll use that. And
Mhm.
you don't end up using it. But
No,
I
that's
think
the psychological part of it. I mean, there's a huge psychological part of, like, getting rid of stuff.
yes. And so I think that, we hold on to this past version of ourselves or like who we used to be and sometimes compare ourselves to that past version of ourselves and saying, oh, I'm missing this. We have nostalgia about it in some way. Um, and that it can bring up a lot of grief. It can bring up a lot of comparison. Um, and I think, you said this to me when I was turning 30, that I was like, oh God, do you know what I'm gonna say?
No, I have no idea.
I was like, oh God, like I'm 30, like this is like a whole thing. Um, and you said something to the effect of like, but look at where you are and like look at what you've achieved and look at like, all of the things that you're doing in your life. And it's such an easy switch when someone kind of pulls you out of that of like, I'm missing all of the things that used to be into like, look at where you are now.
Mhm.
And so I think the grief work can also happen in conjunction with let me acknowledge too, like where I am and what age has given to
Yeah.
me in some ways, because age, even though it gives you aches and pains, it also gives you a lot of knowledge, a lot of
Mhm.
serenity with yourself over time. And so I think that that is a piece of it too, to be able to say, I am grieving and I recognize that in conjunction with that, I'm comparing myself to like who I used to be
Yeah.
and to through that grief work, being able to say, well, look at where I am now. What is it that I have now that maybe I didn't have in the past?
Yeah. Well, right. So it's like coming to terms with actually where I am, like looking at myself and saying I am this age. But I mean, you couldn't pay me to be 22 again.
Same.
I don't give a shit what my body looked like and what cool fun shit I was doing. I wasn't doing any, but you couldn't pay me because I was scared and
Yeah.
anxious and overwhelmed. And I thought that I should have been somewhere that I was, you know what I mean? Like just like who I was, what I felt so shaky.
Yes.
Right. And so there's also parts to look back and be like, would you like really choose that again? And maybe you would, and that's great. And then that's something to grieve. And maybe not, and that's something to change the perspective around.
I
Um,
think, and I think we tend to look at the parts that we like really enjoyed, like the parts that were great as opposed to the parts that were a big struggle.
for me, it was all a big struggle.
Yeah.
I
I
was
I
faking that I was overjoyed. I
I
was
think
faking it.
I think back to that age and I'm like, oh God, I was so like blissfully also unaware of
Yeah,
things. That piece is something that I miss, is just being blissfully
it's so
unaware.
true. It's so true, right?
Mm,
Let's give some, but we have to answer this one just because we have
yeah.
to, Jen. It's comparing myself to other therapists.
Oh, listen.
I know for me, I'm never going to be the best therapist in the world. I mean, I don't know who gets that
Same.
award, but it's definitely not me.
Same.
Um, that like right, like and so I think that is such a risky thing, especially because the field of therapy is so massively large,
Yes.
and you're trained in different ways, and everyone has different styles. And so, like, what, like, okay, so like, do you feel like what is it about those other therapists you're comparing to?
Yeah.
How they do their
Yeah.
work? Is it their social media presidents? Because that presidents is it their social media
All
presidents?
the presidents of social media. They have so
Social
many.
media presence, because that shit's fake too. We know lots of, amazing fucking therapists that I would not spend more than 10 minutes with if I had a choice.
Yeah. Well, also I think about doing therapy as an art. And if you think
Yeah.
about artists, and you can do art in a million different ways, right? And you have people who look at art, and one person might be like, oh, I get that. That resonates with me. And another person who might look at the same piece of art and say, like, that doesn't resonate with me. I don't
Mhm.
connect to that. And so if you look at your style of therapy almost as if you're an artist, right? How do you become the best version of the artist that you are?
Mm.
But if you compare yourself to like Van Gogh or Monet, right? Maybe that's not your style,
Yeah.
right? And the thing is, there are some people
And
who
it
are
doesn't mean it don't
going,
matter.
doesn't mean you don't matter. There's some people who are going to resonate with your style of artistry over Van Gogh and over Monet, you know? And so that is where, and I have to say, at least for me, and you can chime in too, this has been a huge kind of journey to get to this point to understand that, because I think at the beginning, when you are such a new therapist, it is really hard not to compare yourself and to figure
Yeah.
out like, where do I fit in this like huge world of
Yeah.
therapy? And as you start to practice your art and you start to recognize like, this is what resonates with me and this is what's resonating with my clients,
Yeah.
you start to build on that. And so that is what I would say is like, become the best artist that you can possibly be as a therapist.
There's this, hold on. There is this amazing quote from Diablo Cody and Juno. When I have to read it.
Please.
Um, okay. In my opinion, the best thing you can do is find a person who loves you for exactly what you are. Good mood, bad mood, ugly, pretty, handsome, what have you. The right person will still think the sun shines at your ass. And that's the kind of person that's worth sticking with. And the reason I like this idea is because, like, no matter what, like, to me, the best artist in the world is my 4-year-old.
Yeah.
I think that she is the most talented, brilliant artist. It is scribble. It is nothing. And no matter what she does, I will think the sun shines out of her fucking ass. And I feel the same way about you. And I feel the same way about so many of our therapists. And I feel the same way about
Yes.
fucking Nikki, my love of my little life. And you do not have to be the biggest, best, most famous, richest in the world to be surrounded by love. And when we compare ourselves to some of the stuff that is fake, that is what is such a risk to me.
Yes.
When there are probably people in your life who think the sun shines out your ass no matter what. And it's probably some
1000%.
of your clients to that therapist.
Yes.
And that's not every client. There's lots of clients that don't like me, that don't like you, that we know have left us because it wasn't the right fit, and that's great for them. And there's other people that think, I'm totally fucking brilliant. And I think that is, you're going to find the people that work. And that's what I want you to focus on. Okay, so there's a grief. So you don't have the most Instagram followers, you don't own your own practice, and whatever those things are, that does not mean the work you are doing is not incredibly life-changing and important.
Yes.
And so reground that back down and realign yourself. And what are my values here?
Yes. Beautiful. Okay. What do we got next? I'm looking at the questions.
Yeah.
Um,
Sibling dynamics. Why are siblings competitive with each other? Ooh.
I
Are you
want
competitive with
to
your sibling?
No.
Yeah.
I'll just, give a little background. My brother was always like the animated one.
Your
Always
brother is hilarious.
hilarious. He was always loud, he's older than me, and I was quiet, and I was very comfortable taking kind of a back seat. That was very comfortable for me. I also think, the fact that we're different genders was helpful for that, like, helpful to not be compared to my brother in a lot of ways. And I also think the parenting matters in terms of comparing siblings with each other.
Yeah.
Um,
Some parents breed competitiveness between
exactly.
siblings. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Why can't you be
so,
more like Francesca?
yeah, or like, right. Love the names. The names are so good. Um, so yeah, I think that we really didn't get that from our parents in terms of comparison. What about you? Did you have any competitiveness with your brother?
I feel like my brother and I are so drastically different. It would be like comparing like a, a frog and a balloon or something, like not even the same species. But opposite gender,
Exactly.
right? Parents didn't like really breed it within us, but we are very different. I think that now I would be interested if we asked our brothers the same question, if they would feel the same way. I don't feel that. That doesn't mean that's not what my brother feels from me. But I think that I do. I've seen it and I've heard it from so many clients, and I've seen it in my own eyes of other parents that I've been around, that they breed it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, she's so easy and he's so difficult. Well, you might not help their relationship when you
Right.
talk about them like that.
And they're going to internalize that. So that's
Mhm.
what I would, so the person who's asking this question, why are siblings so competitive with each other? I would ask a question to you of what's the competition that comes up for you? Like, what and where maybe did that stem from? What does that bring up for you in being competitive with your sibling? Because I think too, you're so used to, especially if you grew up close in age, same gender, right? That I think it's more natural that parents are maybe
Or
comparing the
twins.
two, or twins. I think it's more natural that siblings are being compared to each other. So my question for you would be like, how do you differentiate from your sibling? Right? Just because that was your upbringing doesn't mean you can't create your own identity and develop a new sense of who you are. And I think that when you're developing your identity and you're constantly being compared to your sibling, it is easy to say, like, oh, who am I in relation to this other person, as opposed to just like, who am I as a person?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what I would encourage in adulthood, is how do you start to disassociate yourself from your sibling? And that doesn't mean cut them off. That means, how do you create your own identity that
Yeah.
isn't in relation to your sibling? And
Yeah.
maybe your narrative about who you are has to change. And
Yeah.
maybe that narrative was based on the comparison to your sibling. And so that might rock your world a little bit to do some of that identity work, but it's going to be so important because you are your own person separate from your sibling.
I do think jealousy within siblings, I think that's instinct. Right?
Yes.
Like, you
Yes.
have that, I want that. You have the red ball, I want the red ball. There is very much like a grass is always greener side,
Yes.
right? And I don't think that's necessarily from parents. I think that's very instinctual from children.
Yes.
Millie's in this phase where she does this thing every show we watch and every book we read, if there is like some stuffed animal or toy, she's like, "Can I have that? That's stuffy. Can I have that? Can I have one of those one day?" And it like is like such a trigger for me because I'm like, one, you can't have everything. Two, you don't need everything. And I can't like it's like very complicated because like half the time I'm just like, yeah, someday, because I'm just like, please stop, and like we're running late and I like have to do this thing.
Yeah.
And then other times I'm like, like we can't have everything all the time. And if we had everything, what would be left for everyone else? And you would get bored of it, and our house wouldn't overflow, right? We like all this stuff. But it is just like that's a normal
Yeah,
childhood thing
of
to
course.
want what other people have.
Yes.
And I
Of
think it's kind of normal now, right? Like I look at my neighbor's house, like I have some neighbors that have like really beautiful landscaping. We have grass.
We have grass. Speaking of
And
grass
like
is always greener,
and ours
literally.
is not. They have very green grass. I have grass that like, children and dogs have destroyed. And I feel jealousy and I compare that, right? So like I think it's just like a normal thing. I think there's also like a safety in it. If I have the nicest house on the block, if I have the nicest clothes, if I have the nicest car, it gives me some type of false sense of security.
Yeah. And I
Keep it
think
up with the
that
Joneses.
that's the trouble, is that like you'll never get there no
I
matter
sure
what you
won't.
do. Right?
I'll
No,
still
not
have
you.
dogs that destroy
I'm
my
saying
grass.
not you specifically. I'm saying people in general. If you always want for more, right? If you're always comparing, you will never get to the point where
Yeah.
you are settled within yourself and being like, okay, I have it all. I'm good.
And I hate to be this girl again and go back up on my soapbox, but let me walk on up
Hop
there.
on up there.
This is my big annoyance with like our values and priorities in society is like we're so freaking obsessed with rich people.
Yes. It's wild. Like social media is obviously it's feeding home decor stuff to me all the time. And like decor, because I'm doing a renovation to my house. And like, holy shit. Let me just say how expensive it is to do some of this
Everything.
shit. And you realize, as you're like scrolling through and social media is like feeding you, like, this is what a beautiful kitchen is. And that it is unachievable, for me, at least at this point in my life. And I think to recognize that too, because you're being fed all this stuff that really is not realistic. And I had to get off social media. Every time now I see some of that, I get off and
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not doing that. Or like, I'll try to, reset my feed by like looking at a long video of a cat or something.
Smart.
Lots of
Confuse
kitten
that
kitty cats.
algorithm.
Yeah, I'm fucking with it. I beat the system. But yeah, it is wild. And I think that happens in so many ways, whether it's looking at really rich people who have, really beautiful homes, or body image stuff, to look at other people who are altering their body, or relationships, right? Where you're only seeing a certain side of relationships on social media and you're
Yeah.
not seeing all of the back end stuff. And so I think that really this is where it opens up a conversation about conscious consumption on social media,
Yeah.
and what that looks like, and recognizing how much you're comparing yourself to other people.
I like this question.
You seem on the fence about it.
Yes. Why is it easier not to compare myself to people who I believe deserve what they have? Okay. I have okay, wait. I have actually, yes, I agree with this question. I do think it's easier. I have this, right? Like it's one of the reasons I had to get off social media was a lot of fertility shit. And right, if I know someone is like going through IVF and they're struggling, it's their first child, I am like, I'm just so happy for them. And then if I have someone who's like talks online about how miserable they are being a mom and they're on their fourth fucking kid, I'm like, not happy about that, right? So I can understand that.
Is there something about being able to relate?
Maybe I have to process through that more.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like deep in thought.
We don't read these questions beforehand. Do you guys know
At
that?
all. We don't, like, we are processing them in
Yeah.
real time.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Do you have that? Or what do you think?
I'm thinking, yeah, I'm trying to think about like how that maybe relates. Um, I, I, if I feel any sort of like, no.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I'm thinking like if I ever feel like anger or something, or like frustration with someone who has something that maybe I don't, or like
Yeah. It brings up less for you.
yeah, it
Less
brings
of a
up
trigger.
less for me because I'm just like, all right, what I think I redirect it.
Yeah.
I think I'm quick to redirect that.
Mhm.
Because anger is just an uncomfortable emotion for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Or frustration with someone else. But that is an interesting one. And I just, you know, I guess my question would be like, what does it do for you? Like, is it
Uh-huh.
serving something for you? Is it giving something for you to have that? And maybe does it bring up the grief and maybe the anger piece of the grief of like, I'm pissed that, like I would be such an amazing mom and I don't get that opportunity, in that scenario, and how frustrating that is and that grief. Like, I'm wondering if it brings up any of the anger
Yeah.
connected towards the grief.
Oh, that's interesting. All right, I have to process that one
Yeah,
more.
yeah. You take your time.
Okay, maybe someone else has a better. If you have a better response, you DM me and
Yeah,
you and
yeah,
I can
yeah,
talk.
yeah, yeah.
And when I say you and I will talk, Jen will screenshot what you say to me,
Yeah, yeah, and I will
and
send
then
it
she
over
will respond
because
it back.
Emilee's just
Um,
on Reddit. She's just loving Reddit
I
these
don't
days.
compare myself to anyone on Reddit. Let me
Got
tell
it.
you that.
The best.
Let me tell you that. Okay, we have to get to your Jen and Em.
Wow. Wow. Time flies when you're having
Time
fun.
time flies when you're,
All right. All right. You want me to
being an
read it? I
S.
got it.
Yes, you were doing great today.
Thank you. I have been with a wonderful partner for 4.5 years and I adore them. My partner still speaks to a previous situationship and it has brought up a lot of insecurities, jealousy, and resentment in me. I know I need to work on myself, but the relationship also bothers me. Where should I begin to work on feeling safe, loved, and wanted by my partner? Thank you for all you do. Love you. We love you too. Um,
Yeah, I want to hear what you to say first.
the first thing I'm going to say, I guess this is a question, obviously you can't answer. Um, have you brought this up to your partner that it bothers you? I think that so often, um, we tend to say like, oh, this is just my issue. This is just something I need to work on, which let me first say, it's wonderful for you to be able to say, I can take some responsibility for this in some way, and I can work on my part of it because relationships are about two people. But I think in any healthy relationship, it is important to be able to talk about the things that maybe bring up some insecurity for you. Because what happens when we don't bring it up and we put it all on ourselves is that resentment, that jealousy, they build. And as they're building, eventually they're going to come out in a way that is not going to be healthy for the relationship. Or one day it's going to come out and you're going to say, well, you always talk about this and I'm so pissed. And who is this person? Whatever it is. And so the thing that I would encourage is for you to be able to bring this to your partner sooner rather than later. To be able to say like, hey, like I want to talk to you about this one thing. I know you bring up this past relationship. It really brings up a lot of insecurities in me and it makes me feel a little bit jealous. I just want to share that with you because I'm not sure if you know that that's something that's coming up for me. I don't think that you're going to go back to this person. I feel secure in our relationship, but it's something that just brings up natural insecurities in me. I start comparing myself to them and it's really hard for me in our relationship. And so, yeah,
And
go ahead.
your answer is so much more detailed and lovely
What would you say?
than mine. Man, you have brought this thing up multiple times and I really don't like it. Doesn't make me feel good. Might be my shit. Who knows? But out of respect, can we not talk about them anymore? I would just plain and simple set a boundary, right? Because we're talking about boundary work in some ways, right? And I think that we, in a relationship, if something's really not working for you, like, you are their partner and you get to fucking say that. And if there's some reason of why they can't do that, I think that gives you a lot of information too.
Yeah.
But you're allowed to just straight up say, like, actually, like, boundary.
Not working for me.
Not working for me, honey.
So you have two different ways of going about this.
Jen's is nice.
But both are setting boundaries.
It's two different ways of setting boundaries, right?
Two different ways of setting boundaries. Essentially, what we're saying is it is not your responsibility to take this all on yourself and say, I need to change something.
Yeah. And that's what you're saying in this question.
It's important in any relationship to be able to say, this is not working for me. And it's important for us to change this.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. All right. Hey.
That's our episode.
Compare this episode to others. We're not sure.
Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and follow on Apple Podcasts. If you are looking for a clinician, we have clinicians in so many states across the US now. We just got openings in California. So if you're in California and you've been on a wait list, feel free to reach on out. You can go to thetherapygroup.com. If you're not sure if we have a clinician in your state, just fill out a contact form and we can let you know. If we don't, we will definitely give you referrals. If this episode resonated with you, you think it would resonate with a friend, feel free to send it on over. We love you. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you.
Check us out on YouTube too.
Oh, check us out on YouTube. You'll see
our
lovely faces.
Thank you for listening today. And don't forget that to grow yourself, you got to know yourself. We'll see you next week on ShrinkChicks.